Let's go.
You're listening to Making Data Simple, where we make the world of data effortless, relevant, and yes, even fun.
Hey folks, podcast and listeners, Al Martin here. Welcome to Making Data Simple. I appreciate you being here as always. Hope things are well. It's a little dreary out today, but I'm bringing a ton of energy. I'm going to jump right in as I normally do. Today I have, my guest is Nick Amabile, and he's the CEO of DAS42. This is a U.S. data analytics consulting firm that helps companies make better business decisions faster. I'm thinking with that name, the first thing I thought, he must be the consultant of Roswell Area 51 or something. I don't know. We're going to have to get the name. Is founded in 2015, comprised of data analysts, scientists, business professionals, and engineers. They provide end-to-end data services that includes data strategy, tech stack integrations, application implementation, enterprise analytics training. How did I do, Nick?
Pretty good, Al. Not bad at all. So thanks for having me again. And so DAS42 is a boutique data and analytics consulting firm. And, like you said, we have kind of what we call the full stack philosophy where, not only do we do the technical integrations, but we really take a business focused lens first and foremost to these type of projects. And we focus exclusively on modern cloud-based systems. So this is like Snowflake, Google Cloud, AWS. So like kind of all the big players in the data and analytics ecosystem. We work with these tools to implement them and make them successful to actually drive business outcomes for companies.
Nicely done. It seems like you said that before.
A few times, definitely. not the first time. You got to wake up pretty early to get me on that one.
So I actually come from Expert Lab Services for data and AI apps, automation. IBM has its own IBM Consulting. This is more closer to the lab to make the product sticky, etc. Before we jump into that, I always like to start with your experience. Tell us a little bit of history of yourself and how you ended up where you're at.
Data analytics, such kind of a fragmented situation. And now you have like data scientists, you have machine learning, you have all these different roles. I actually went to school for economics, really studied statistics, econometrics, worked at a consulting firm a long time ago doing statistical programming. So like SAS and Stata for those folks that are familiar with that kind of stuff. But I really enjoyed the technical aspect. I really enjoyed the quantitative aspect, but really the technical aspect, the programming aspect. Basically, almost got fired from that first job. Realized it wasn't, it wasn't the right fit. And, upon a lot of reflection and time, I can say that now. The lucky thing was I went to go work for a number of different startups after that. Really got involved in analytics, and basically found that every time I wanted to get a report at this job, I would have to go talk to a DBA, and the DBA would be kind of grumpy and he'd be like, whatever, I don't have time for you to get this report. And then the CEO, I'd get the report, I'd go take it to the CEO, and the CEO would be, okay, what does this mean? Is this number right, et cetera, et cetera? And I'd be like, well, I don't know. I didn't write, the query. I don't really know all the data. And so what I realized that I was missing that technical aspect. I kind of was the bridge between the business and technical. And so I really invested my career in learning more about the technical side, teaching myself different types of programming, but really focusing on bridging that gap between business and technical teams. And most recently, I was the head of business intelligence at Jet.com. And prior to that, I was in senior analytics roles at Etsy. Luckily, I was ahead of the curve on some of these big data type technologies. I was working in Hadoop and other things like that, which was very interesting. And learned a lot of lessons the hard way, hung out my shingle to really just try to save folks a lot of the same headaches that I had already faced, and thought I was a little bit ahead of the curve. So basically I just wanted to have a lifestyle business where I could choose my own clients and work from home and still focus on the actual practitioner aspect of it. Of course, now it's grown into a much bigger thing. Our second customer was Amazon, so that really kind of meant that we were off to the races. So now we're about a company of 65 people, private equity backed, got some really big blue chip customers, and just loving it. Still doing the work.
Nice, very nice. I think you described every DBA. And sorry, DBAs, you got to admit, you're a little bit grumpy. Always.
You know what I mean?
You got to jump in and tell me about DAS42.
Yeah, so the original corporate name of the company was Data and Analytics Services. So that's the DAS, pretty simple. The 42 is a reference to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's the meaning of life, the universe, and everything. And if you know the story about how the supercomputer comes back with the answer is 42. But when the people get the answer, they're so confused. They're like, well, what does this mean? And the supercomputer is like, how can you understand the answer if you don't understand the question? And so that's kind of like what we do at DOS 42 is help folks understand the questions and ask the right questions of their data. And a lot of times it's the question that needs sort of refinement versus kind of the answer or the technical side of it. So anyway, a little bit of a reference.
Wow. Did you shorten it over time or something to just make it DOS, or is that all?
Yeah, it was like, I mean, data analytics services doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, and it's pretty generic. And the .com was available, so you got to have the .com.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I went out to your website for the podcast. So it's nice. How do you
Thanks.
go from economics? I mean, in fact, there's been a handful of folks that go from economics to analytics. It doesn't seem like I kind of get it. You could say a lot of data science is about statistics, et cetera, but is that it? Is that the connection? I mean, how do you make that connection? How do you make that leap?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think that's certainly part of it. But, for me, again, like working in the statistical programming aspect, what you kind of realize, it's almost like a Python type thing these days. And like now, sort of when I went to school, they didn't have programs in data analytics. Nowadays, they have boot camps, they have master's degrees in business analytics, and all this kind of stuff that wasn't available. And, to your point, it's like the people that I've worked with in my career that I've really thought were great, sort of data analytics people, they've been everything from biostats, computer science, kind of more the traditional path, all the way to like English majors and, sculpture people and sort of liberal arts type people. It's crazy. I think, it's that critical thinking aspect that I think is really important. And then, of course, if you have a passion for technology, then you're able to really combine it. And it's a difficult profile. I mean, we're out in the market trying to hire these folks all the time. I know a lot of people, probably your listeners, are out there trying to find, data analysts, data scientists, data engineers. And it's really difficult to hire those folks. And once you hire them, it's also difficult to retain them. So, yeah, exactly. So it's a tough market out there. And you got to start looking for these different kind of backgrounds. The non-traditional backgrounds, I think, really brings a diverse perspective to the field.
It's funny. I joke about this, but I'm dead serious. And that is when I got into data, it was more like two-phase commits and working with banks and stuff like that. I mean, it was very important. I saw how important it was, but if you tell your friends, it was like, what are you doing? It doesn't sound that important, man. And now it's like data is the center of the universe. That's why, so on this podcast, we talk about everything, but I still kept the name Making Data Simple because it seems like it always comes back to data, right? It's something, it's data analytics, whatever. And you're right. Right now, it's hard to find talent. It's hard to keep talent. It's hard to find talent. So it doesn't surprise me that your consulting team is doing well. You said you've had this going since 2015?
Yeah, since 2015. It's been a good ride. I mean, like I said, I mostly was just trying to have a lifestyle business, and I didn't want to become a manager of managers. I still wanted to be close to the work, and I still am passionate. I'm still talking to our clients every day about how we can help solve their data problems, or accurately, actually, their business problems with data. That's really what we try to focus on. And so I'm really passionate about it. Obviously, I love, coming to work every day, but it's just such a need because like you're saying, right, the folks that need the talent can't find the talent. And then even if you can find the talent, it's kind of a crapshoot, right? You might have a team of folks that maybe know your technology stack. Maybe they don't, maybe they're going to work out, maybe they won't. But that's, a lot of the stuff is outsourceable because, most people for let's say data warehousing and business intelligence, every business needs that. And not every business is going to build up an expertise in data engineering and business intelligence. There's some strategic aspects to that, but it's quite outsourceable. And so we find that, given the talent market the way it is, given the needs of modern businesses, like we fill a pretty big niche.
So when I introduced and I said you're a consulting organization, you kind of paused me for a second and said, well, and you kind of broke that down. I mean, so are you consulting, or could you say, well, we do business, blah, blah, so just to make sure, you say your brand's consulting, is that it? Period?
Yes. Well, it's always a little bit more nuanced than that, right? I mean, so, like I said before, you have kind of the business team and the technology team, and oftentimes they talk past each other. We come in and we fill that gap. And so what does that exactly mean? We talk to the business folks, we understand, how do you make money? What customers do you have? Who are you going after? And then we sort of work backwards to a technical solution, and actually then hands-on keyboard, we implement the data pipelines, data warehouse, we build out the reporting. So it is a lot of actual implementation. But I think the difference between us and other firms is we are opinionated. We have ways and methodologies of doing things and sort of opinions on different technology that we like. And we're not just going to, take orders from our customers. We really collaborate with them, develop a plan and a strategy And of course, we implement that strategy. So it's not just us delivering PowerPoint decks. We're actually like building out code and data pipelines and all that kind of stuff.
So I got it. So consulting and services, but
Yeah.
under the consulting umbrella, that makes sense. So why not join? There's Accenture, there's IBM, there's all kinds of consulting places. Why do your own thing?
I thought we had a little bit different approach to things. Like I said, I was quite opinionated on the modern stack. What we found is that a lot of bigger consulting firms like your Accentures or Slaloms, et cetera, who do have practices, they're not particularly focused on that side of the business. Of course, we have a high level of service, being a small, agile boutique. So we bring that sort of boutique methodology. But that's all we do. We don't do like legacy systems. We don't do on-prem. None of that is what we do. We only focus on the modern stack, which I think is a little bit different. And there's certainly good boutiques out there that also do what we do. But, we think we're on the larger side of that. And we still think there's a gap in the market. That's what we're trying to fill. We're trying to come and be the scaled boutique that fits in between the real small folks and some of the bigger ones. And I think, last I checked, at least one of the few, if not the only, private equity-backed boutique consulting firm in the space.
So I get the modern stack, and maybe you've kind of already said it, but I hit it one more time. What do you say is your differentiator from, I got the modern stack, but then I assume there's other consulting organizations, or even of mine, we could say, hey, we're driving the modern stack, but what do you do different?
What business problems are you trying to solve? Most other boutiques do not have the skill and experience in the enterprise. So they don't have very large customers and very complex projects like we do. Of course, the bigger guys have the blue chip customers. They have the enterprise experience. They don't have the technical depth. So again, we're kind of fitting in the middle between sort of the boutiques, on the smaller boutiques that have technical depth, and the bigger folks with the enterprise clients. We combine the technical depth with the enterprise expertise and the ability to execute on large projects.
I know many customers come right in and they think, hey, I want to implement AI. I want to do this. How do you solve or characterize their business problem? Have them take a step back. Where's your methodology?
Before we talk about technology, that's great. Let's first talk about, how do you make money? Like, who are your customers? Those type of basic questions. We start with discovery process where we interview different business stakeholders. A lot of our customers, when they come to us, they don't know the art of the possible, right? Like they're sort of unknown unknowns out there. And so maybe they heard something or read something. We say, okay, let's start from the basics. Let's start about your business problem. Cohort analysis, retention analysis, customer acquisition, inventory analysis, margin analysis, all that kind of stuff that a business needs. We go do, and we understand how do we actually take data and analytics and implement or sort of insert that into those different processes.
That makes sense. So are you CEO? Are you practitioner? Or are you both?
Both. So,
how do you do both? Your business is growing. Now you've got venture money and you still have time to do both?
Well, less and less on the practitioner side these days. But like I said, I still, I've been doing the sales for a long time. We're starting to grow out the sales team, but, I still get in front of customers and talk about their problems and how we actually sort of address them and then come up with ideas with the team. Of course, there's a lot of just operational stuff now where it's like, HR and, hiring and recruiting and, all the other things that one has to do to grow a business. But that's what I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about talking with customers and understanding the problems and getting on a whiteboard and drawing out solution architectures. Like, I love that aspect of it. Like I said, do less of it these days, but still try to stay close to it.
So again, I get the modern setup, the boutique, et cetera, but there must be another moat in there that you haven't noted that's pretty profound.
So a couple things that I think, set us apart more from an operational standpoint. A lot of the other boutiques that we talk to, they also hire typically more experienced folks. We hire more junior folks. And what we do is we really invest in our team and sort of have a proprietary kind of training program that gets people who are smart and capable, but maybe lack some of the specific technical skills. We ramp them up. And what we also try to do is take all obviously the best practices and lessons learned across projects and sort of bake them into our methodology. And that really is a focus piece, right? Because we don't do like 10 different BI tools. We don't do like 10 different data warehouse tools. We really focus on a couple, if not one, key technology partner at each layer of the stack. So like Snowflake is our go-to data warehouse. Looker is our go-to BI tool. We have different partners at each layer of the stack, and we focus on those tools. So if somebody wants to go implement, Redshift or something like that, other folks are probably good at that. We'll say, you know what, we're probably not the best firm for you guys. We're really focused on Snowflake because that's how we're going to drive our differentiation, and that's how we're going to drive our kind of premium rate structure.
Teach me about consulting. Do you have a mantra around consulting? What is the most important aspect in your mind of consulting? I mean, I don't want to say your organization, but there must be something that you say, hey, here's what our philosophy.
Yeah, I mean, so we talk about the full stack philosophy, which is, sort of we think that all companies are data driven and things like that. And really it's about having one team that can work across business and technology. That's kind of the core piece of it. But at the end of the day, we work with our customers and take ownership over their business goals. I think, again, like when we kind of position ourselves, business consulting first and IT services secondarily, we understand the business context and come in and help drive towards that. But it's really that full stack philosophy, and that's really kind of our pitch deck goes through all that and kind of how it works and gets us to the solution that we arrive at. And we say, hey, if you believe in these different things that you want to do from a strategic level to become data driven, here's the solution that we recommend to go do that. So that's kind of at least the pitch, obviously, without going through the full deck here. But
Do you ever do just services? I mean, like subcontractor, or you say, no, our philosophy is business services first. So usually we're going to drive the business strategy and then we'll bring in the IT secondary. But if we're not driving the strategy, we typically don't get in.
Yeah, we typically don't do that. And that's been something that, I think, given the dynamics in the market, a lot of other boutique firms do typically sort of do that kind of subcontracting work. I mean, maybe we try to come in and get a foot in the door, but it's pretty rare that we would do a subcontract with our partners. A lot of other folks do that, but we want to own the direct relationship with the customer. We want to drive the strategy, put together roadmaps, vision, and then of course we want to execute against that. We want to implement it, of course, but if we are not able to kind of, for example, be a part of the scoping process and understand the business use cases, then sure, we can move the bits around or whatever, but it's not going to actually be successful at the end of the day. And I think that's where a lot of these projects end up failing.
Are your contracts T&M, fixed price, managed services, all of the above?
Yeah, a little bit of all of the above. I mean, we used to do pretty exclusively fixed price because, when you're first starting out, you put the risk all on yourself versus the customer. It also aligns incentives pretty nicely, where, the incentive for the customer is to get it yesterday. And for us, it's like the quicker we can do a project at fixed price, the better we can get and sort of the higher margin we can do. But long story short, a lot of big enterprise buyers just are used to, hey, here's the rate card on a T&M basis. Let's just go with that, because there's a lot of operational overhead. Although we do have some large customers that are still on fixed price because they have the procurement teams to go through and sort of manage the milestones and stuff like that, the invoicing. But yeah, I mean, managed services is a growing piece of business for us. We are leaning into that in 2022. It's a unique offering in the industry around some of these modern tools where, essentially you may have a team of data engineers who need that sort of expertise on how to manage cost and performance and other considerations. So we do offer a managed service around that. It's something that we'll continue to build out. And we also think that there's just a broader market for that. Obviously, recurring revenue is great for a consulting firm.
If you have your preference and you had to choose between T&M, fixed price, and managed services, which bucket you say, look, I'm going all in on subscription, or I'm going all in fixed price because I get it up front, or what?
No, we would come in with a T&M model and then switch them to managed services at the end of an implementation. So, we think of the implementation as kind of accelerating time to value for our customers and de-risking the technology investment that they're making, and then being able to support that and the long-term success of that sort of technology and project with managed services. So that's kind of the model that we're leaning into. And we think that there's a big opportunity where we can get managed services to be let's call it 20-25% of revenue long term. But that's a longer term investment. Today, bread and butter is project based T&M implementations.
Is managed services cost effective for most clients in your mind?
Yeah, most clients, they are. I mean, you think about, like we were talking about before, the market for hiring somebody who's like a Snowflake expert, data engineer, first off, you're going to have a hard time finding them, as we just discussed. You're going to pay them a lot of money, and that is not the best use of time. I mean, you can hire folks who know SQL, but maybe don't know Snowflake for, a little bit more cost effectively. And so we're sort of that independent third party where we can say, hey, maybe this workload makes sense over in this tool versus Snowflake, or hey, here's a way for you to actually kind of optimize, let's say, your spend, but you're not spending as much, or as you grow, you're spending more effectively. That's, I think, a service that is absolutely cost effective.
From a business solution perspective, what use cases are you spending most of your time on?
It runs the gamut. I mean, like marketing is a heavy one. Let's say it's direct to consumer marketing. We work a lot with direct to consumer video streaming platforms, a bunch of the major ones. And, they're looking for customer acquisition, like how do we get new subscribers? And then once you get new subscribers, how do you retain them? What are they watching? What are they doing on your platform? B2B SaaS is a thing that we work a lot with. So in other words, we help software as a service companies sort of optimize their sales team and their go-to-market efforts. So looking at kind of sales funnels to cash conversion, all that kind of stuff. We work a lot with finance teams across different types of industries to understand kind of margin and inventory, supply chains, that kind of stuff. And e-commerce and retail, we do a lot of work with them around kind of conversion rate optimization, funnel analysis, cohort analysis, stuff like that. So, it runs the gamut. It's all kind of business functions out there. Product analytics, product managers want to understand feature usage, A/B testing, and stuff like that. So, it really runs the gamut. I say that every company has these problems and these challenges, if they know, whether they know it or not, right? And so we help a variety of industries with a variety of use cases.
Do you use a lot of assets, or do you have methodologies to accelerate the engagements up front?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said before, we're focused on a pretty core set of technologies. So that means the stuff that we learn on one project is quite transferable to another, especially when you think about these kind of industry, use cases. Like, for example, it's like integrating Salesforce with NetSuite. There's a bunch of companies out there that use Salesforce and NetSuite, for example. They're data silos. They got to put them together in the same place so that they can sort of look at the sales to cash kind of conversion process. And so that's a solution where, we can come up with some repeatable processes that are across the board that are relevant. But of course, Salesforce and NetSuite are both highly customizable, and it's very difficult, to have a completely standardized thing. So we come in, of course, have the bank of knowledge, and we come in and customize it.
That makes sense. What still surprises you? I mean, in these engagements, what do you say? Oh man, I tell you what, I cannot believe blah.
I mean, it's not necessarily a surprising thing. It sort of continues to kind of, I don't want to say amaze me, but, look, this is why I started a consulting firm, is because the problem is rarely technology. There's fantastic technology out there. You look at a landscape of all the data analytics technology logos. There's like 1,000 logos. Nobody knows what they do. You go to the website, it's quite opaque. You can't actually understand it. Even as a practitioner, I can't understand everything. What I still am amazed, though, is like it's still just a people process kind of problem. And this is why, I started a consulting firm, because having the experience and the methodologies and the playbooks and just the ability to understand and connect business use cases to the technology is still just a big gap throughout businesses. And that's really what I'm passionate about solving. And, like I said, you just see it over and over and over again. Doesn't matter the industry, doesn't matter the use case. Again, it's just mostly a people process technology situation, but the technology is there. People and process is where we focus most.
What is true that no one really agrees with you on?
One of the things that I just am not buying into the AI machine learning hype yet. So that's my opinion. I think like what I actually think, when you kind of asked about consulting firms with AI and machine learning, I think like most of that stuff is going to be taken care of. Software as a service, very niche use cases, very like specific industry verticals. So it's like predictive maintenance for utility companies or recommendation systems for e-commerce companies. So, I think a lot of that hype around AI machine learning, you watch golf or you watch sports, you get an IBM commercial, you get like, different commercials that are talking about different things and AI hype. Anyway, so I think it's a little overhyped. And then that's what I'm saying. Like, I think it's still early game for a lot of companies building out their data and analytics capabilities. So, if there's one thing controversial, I'll go out on that one.
Well, at least you answered it. That's good. I mean, I differ a little bit, as you might imagine, coming from IBM. Having said that, I mean, where I don't differ is, look, there's a lot of people in spreadsheets. They got to get from point A to point B.
Yeah.
I mean, their maturity curve is just starting still.
Yeah.
I say this all the time. That's why I got a podcast, because it's just the fundamentals. And we do get a lot of folks, look, AI is just computer science at the end of the day.
Yep, exactly.
It's machine learning consistent. But you got to be able to, they come in and say, oh, I want to do churn analysis, whatever. Then we go look at their data. And it's like, oh my goodness,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
It's only as good as the data coming in, right? So I from that standpoint, I totally agree. There's enough work to be done on the front end to get people on this maturity curve. But I do think the faster they get on there and the faster they're able to leverage like machine learning, et cetera, the more competitive they will be.
Absolutely. My main point was like, it's still very, very early days. And so I think, when you watch the commercials, you almost get a sense of FOMO, right? Like, oh man, everyone's doing it, right? Like I'm behind the curve, I maybe have a little bit of a skunk works type project on the side to kind of figure this one out. But it's like, nah, we're just not there yet. I think it's a big growth area, obviously a big opportunity both for our company, but also for companies in general, and businesses to actually enable this stuff. But, at the end of the day, we're just still in early days. So,
well, but I do think I totally agree. I think we're in alignment here. I do agree that I think you can leapfrog. It's not too late, is what I was about to say. It's not too
That's for
late
sure.
for a number of different reasons, but I also think you can catch up and leapfrog some of the competition. You don't have to, you can take different use cases or smaller edge use cases, start there, and then build it up, and then hit those across the maturity curve where you are using AI and use some of the others and take your time with those. So you can modernize ASAP. The one thing we can probably agree on that, everybody listening should take note of is, look, just start, show up, get started. It's not too late, but let's get started, and you can lead the competition. So when you do consulting, I'm curious because I manage a consulting organization. Maybe it won't apply to everybody listening, but it applied to me, so I'll ask it anyway. It's my podcast, so I can do that. Do you look at things like utilization? Are you burning down backlog? And it's all the different leading and lag metrics. I mean, anything, any out of the ordinary metric that you would say, now look, we've started doing X, Y, or Z?
Consulting in and of itself, I think, is a pretty tried and true business model. I think for me, so all the metrics that you talked about, like utilization, backlog, burn down, et cetera, like bookings, all that good stuff, right? Just all the basic metrics are certainly still relevant. It's really kind of inputs, hiring and recruiting, outputs, sales, and projects, right? So it's not a complex business model from that perspective. What we try to do, for at least, for our team internally, is to create more of a startup tech-like culture and take a lot of lessons and things that I've learned from culture and values from companies that I've worked at in the startup ecosystem, bring that more to consulting. A lot of people are doing it now. It's not like groundbreaking, but we've been doing it since 2015, just distributed teams, remote work, Zoom. Most of our work with our clients even is remote. So even before the pandemic, we weren't traveling and getting on planes and doing that kind of thing. So we're trying to have a better culture and differentiate on that for our hiring and recruiting side of the house. But, from a business model perspective, it's really just the same.
Is your company yourself data driven? Meaning, do you have like models that, like you were talking about in terms of backlog? I mean, you're loading the truck and you're putting things on the truck and people have to deliver what's on the truck. Do you have models that predict, all right, well, so we have so much on the truck, so we know that we should have X amount of revenue this quarter, and that's how it's predicted? Or is it more bottoms up? And I mean, just curious if you're data driven yourself.
I mean, it's like a case of the cobbler's children having no shoes. You know what I mean? We've had a data and analytics initiative and a business intelligence initiative like the last couple of quarters, and a lot of these things, we don't have the bandwidth. It's like all of our consultants are focused on our customer projects and not on internal projects. So, the other day I was making a joke to our team. I was like, man, we're really not making enough progress on this data and analytics internal initiative. Like, man, we should hire like a data analytics consultant.
Consulting company so you get it done.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't that the truth?
It's
hard to feed yourself first. I particularly if you're trying to grow the way you're trying to go and start off, and then you're venture funded. The last thing they want to see is added cost internally.
Right. But then, but on the flip side, right, everyone wants to see the metrics. Hey, Nick, what do the bookings look like? What's the pipeline looking like? What's hiring and recruiting looking like? You know what I mean? So it's like we got to have the metrics, and right now we're in spreadsheets, and pretty soon, hopefully we're going to get onto something like Looker.
Yeah, no, I hear you. So at least you open and honest. I can appreciate that. How has the pandemic affected you?
Everyone back in March 2020 was no one knew it was going to happen. Luckily we had enough pipeline. We closed a couple big deals right around the early pandemic. And like I said, from a working perspective with our team and with our clients, we've always been remote. We've always been distributed. We've always had this sort of cadence and across time zones, even like all this kind of stuff. So we were able to shift from a working style into it pretty easily. The question, of course, was, how well sort of IT budgets and project budgets sort of shape out. We were able to make it through, luckily, and things really started to pick back up since probably the end of last summer or, towards the end of last year. I mean, things came back with a vengeance, and now we're seeing lots of people really accelerate these types of projects. I think, obviously, I'm not some pontificator here, but you read in the news about how folks are now shifting more and more to digital and more to direct to consumer. And that's just tailwinds for us. And we've been dealing with that prior to the pandemic. So I think if anything, it's just accelerated things. Hiring has been more challenging, and some of the things that we do as a remote team, we used to have offsites. We used to get everyone together once a year. And so that's kind of been difficult, just like probably every business has had challenges around employee engagement, and now leading into retention. But let's say we've been quite lucky to be able to make it through and actually thrive during that period.
Well, two parts you kind of you talked to that I had two notes here. One is hiring. I
Yep.
mean, so let's start there. Look, for IBM, and most people know IBM, it's still hard. I mean, it's
Yeah.
really hard to find candidates. How are you able to find candidates? Maybe you can give me a secret. I'm not trying to steal your secrets here. But I mean, how do you? I mean, now there's some people that I get it. Big fish, they want to be a bigger fish in a smaller pond or whatever, and I
Right.
get that totally. So you have definite advantages for that standpoint. But I still gotta believe it's tough.
Oh, yeah, it's absolutely tough. I mean, like we're in a jam in terms of our capacity right now because the 2020, 2021 hiring cycle was pretty lean. It was not as much as we expected. And most of our hiring and recruiting actually comes from universities. So a lot of our hiring and recruiting comes from, business analytics or masters in business analytics, different boot camps and stuff like that. Universities obviously were sort of enrollment was down and people weren't in person. And typically, if you think about hiring and recruiting, it takes a lot of effort in person to go to career fairs, job fairs, info sessions, all the stuff that you do on campus. So we weren't able to do that as much as we wanted to, and we had in the past. And so we kind of suffered for it this year. We're hoping to get back in person on campuses this coming spring here. But cross your fingers and knock on wood. But that's the strategy, and it's worked out well for us. It's just been difficult to execute during the pandemic.
And what about engagement?
I mean, how many Zoom happy hours have you been to this year?
We started off, did a couple, ton of Zoom happy hours, and that after about the first 6 months, no more Zoom happy hours.
That's what I'm saying, right? I mean, everyone's kind of like, oh, well, if we're gonna do another Zoom happy hour. I mean, but like, how excited would you be if you came to a real life in person happy hour, with folks that you work with? I mean, there's so many people that we've hired in the last. I mean, because we're growing, we have hired about 30 people this year, almost doubled the size of the company. And I've never met a lot of these folks in person, and they don't have, like I said before, if we're differentiating ourselves on hiring and recruiting via our culture and our values and our work life and sort of our style, then it's very difficult to get a sense of that just over Zoom. And folks who are like, again, we have a lot of young folks on the team, a lot of folks in like New York City, for example. You're in an apartment, like 400 square foot apartment with 5 roommates. You can't work from home in that kind of situation, right? They want an office. They want a social life at work. I still believe this. We just signed a big lease in New York. We're working on expanding our offices in Denver. So, I do think that the office culture will come back. I've always been doing hybrid work anyway. We've always had a flexible work from home policy, but it's been really difficult to get folks, to drink the Kool-Aid, if you will, of our culture and values without in-person.
Makes sense. If most everything is in-house, and this will sound like kind of a silly question because I could maybe answer, but if it's mostly in-house, why the venture capital funding?
That's something that, we think that there's just a great opportunity, lots of tailwinds. And, we've been bootstrapped for, 5.5, 6 years. And there's a lot of just risks to that, right? You can't hire ahead of the curve as much as you'd like. You can't maybe make the investments and the right opportunities. Like for example, COVID, right? Like we were bootstrapped during COVID, and we're like, okay, is this the end of the company, right? Like, is everything just going to dry up, and we're going to have to lay everyone off? So having that cushion to be able to weather the storms of different market trends, to be able to hire ahead of the curve, and to make some of those investments, like you mentioned before. Like we're talking about building out a sales team, a marketing team, HR, all the different functional areas you need to grow a business.
Kind of the SG&A stuff that you wouldn't.
That's right. Like normally it would be like, all right, unless they're billing or selling something, then they're not coming on board. But now we have the opportunity to really start fleshing these things out and become a much more mature organization.
So if I talk to you 2-3 years from now in DOS 42, where do you think you're at?
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned this before, but we're looking for that scaled boutique, kind of that something in the 250, 500 person range company that's bigger than your sort of real small folks, smaller than some of your regional and mid market folks, because we think there's just that opportunity. In 2 to 3 years, we'll start layering on. Hopefully, we'll have much larger managed service business. We'll start layering on some of that machine learning and AI that we talked about. We're going to have to start making investments there over the next few years to really kind of build out service offerings and practice areas around that. It's really just, I think a lot of it, though, is continuing to focus and double down on what's working rather than sort of really kind of pivoting. And so it's kind of more like we want to be the partner of choice for companies across their entire data analytics, kind of journey. Right now, we're kind of in the first couple of innings of a lot of folks' journeys, and then we want to be the folks along the curve. So in other words, data applications, machine learning, data governance, data strategy, change management, all that kind of stuff. Those all just become practice areas. But I think, the other thing too is like it's exciting because these days every company is a technology company. we can kind of pivot to management consulting if you wanted to, and kind of go, McKinsey, Bain, BCG route. But I don't know. It's exciting. I mean, it's a great space to be in, and I've got a lot of energy, as you said, at the top of the podcast too. So.
What are your practices today?
Business intelligence and data warehousing. Those are the two ones. And so, as part of the engagements, we also do things like data governance and, data strategy and other things. But really, it's all kind of in service of just business intelligence and data warehousing. That's really the key practice area for us right now. And we'll start to add that, add on to that later on.
What do you think the next one you'll add will be?
We kind of go back and forth, whether it's kind of this machine learning, predictive analytics. I think it's probably more of the applications. Like I said, it's like kind of that interim step. So we add like data applications, which is kind of more of an app dev type shop, but it's really focused on leveraging the skills and tools that we have in the data and analytics space, and then making these specific, real kind of focused use cases out of it. But that's probably it. That or a change management kind of practice that encompasses like data governance and solution architecture and road mapping and technology rationalization. There's a few different aspects to that, I think, there.
What do you think the biggest mistake most consulting companies make is?
The number one rule in my mind of consulting companies is twofold. One, I guess, the number one rule is raise your rates. You know what I mean? You're probably
raise your rates? Is that what you
yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? I mean, especially if, like, think about like the solopreneur type person, right? Like the person who just like is kind of more like the freelance consultant, right? It's one thing if you want to be that freelancer forever. If you're trying to start a bootstrap kind of a smaller consulting business, that's the number one rule is raise your rates. You're probably not charging enough. The second, of course, is, hiring too early. That obviously is deadly. But, I think the thing with me is like I was a practitioner, so I was able to do a lot of the work myself where we kind of get bootstrapped and put money in the bank. But always go out there.
Are your rates directly proportional to the maturity of the individual? In other words, their kind of their length of time in the industry holistically, or is it just based on the industry skill, what the market will bear?
Yeah, it's mostly the latter. Certainly we have a tiered rate structure, so that way, we can have a blended, sort of staffing model where we have different levels. We can't have necessarily people charging a whole ton of money right out of college, but it's mostly driven by the market. Let's put it that way. And that's kind of why I'm saying always keep raising your rates, because like, especially in times like this when, the market for hiring is so tough, the demand is so high. It's just supply and demand. Remember, I went to school for economics, right? It's just that supply and demand.
Right. Sounds good. All right. So where can folks reach out to DOS?
Yeah, it's just DOS42.com. That's the website. My email is just nick@DOS42.com. Keep things simple. Always happy to talk to folks and hopefully say something smart and maybe work together.
All right. Look, we'll put that in our show notes. Thank you for being here. I've got just a couple of quick questions. What do you do for fun, man?
Oh, it's a good question. These days, not as much. I like to golf. I like to collect records. I like to cook. I have a lot of hobbies that I don't seem to ever do anything with, is what I'll say.
What records? What's your favorite record?
I like collecting 50s and 60s, R&B and soul records. So I like kind of the Motown, doo-wop, early R&B, and then 80s. I go into more like hip hop and early 90s hip hop, and then some like disco and stuff like that. It's polyglot, right? I like different types of genres.
And you're throwing this on a turntable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I got 2 turntables, and I used to do like music production, so that's a big hobby of mine. I have a whole half studio full of stuff that is just collecting dust.
You got a studio? You're like going wah, 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 wah.
Yeah,
you do this?
Yeah, of course.
Wow. See,
that's fun.
I just asked that question.
Yeah, and my wife, is like, turn it all down. You know what I mean? Like, anyway.
You must not have made too much money in there. You wouldn't be doing consulting.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Yeah. Hey, it doesn't pay the bills, but it's a fun time, to party with your friends on the weekend and DJ for them.
Nice. Hey, I'm going to play a quick game, and I don't do it all the time, but I've got a couple questions for you. This is called Would You Rather. Okay?
Okay.
You got to pick one side of the fence. You can't say, well, I got to do both. You got to pick one. That's the thing.
Okay.
Whatever.
Right.
Okay. Raising money or self-funded?
Self-funded.
All right. Growth or profitability?
Profitability.
Yeah, that's econ right there. All right. I don't know. Hold on. I had this question down. This is more like not a would you rather, but it's a question. If you had $1 million to deliver growth and you could spend it in one place, would you spend it on human or technology?
Humans, people.
All right. When hiring, do you hire for skill or culture?
Culture.
Boy, you're answering those awfully quick. All right. In your CEO style, are you very forward and direct, or more like purposeful and thoughtful?
Direct.
Direct. All right. Hey, that's all the questions I got, man. I'm all out. It's been a pleasure talking with you. I always like to talk to a fellow consultant because I learned a lot, man. So that's great.
Well,
Thank you so much.
well, thanks for having me, Al. Yeah, I really appreciate it and enjoyed the conversation. So, well, hopefully we'll catch up soon.
All right, folks, you know where to reach out to. DOS 42. 42 is the answer. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy right there. He's thought into that. He must have read that book a few times. Anyway, thank you for listening. You can always reach out to me on almartintalksdata@gmail.com. Love to hear from you. And until next time, I will see you on the podcast. Thanks, folks.
Thanks for listening to the Making Data Simple podcast, where we make data fun. Be sure to visit IBMBigDataHub.com/podcast to access the show notes and uncover even more great episodes. Remember, the views expressed here are those of the host and its guests, and do not necessarily represent the views of IBM. Until next time, go over and out.